What happens when a backup guard becomes the most controversial player in women's basketball? Sophie Cunningham has recently been under a lot of hot water, and honestly, it's partly because of what she did, but her fans definitely made it 10 times worse. We're talking about eye pokes, body checks, takedowns that would make WWE jealous, and a petition to literally ban her from the WNBA that got more signatures than some politicians get votes. This story has everything: viral TikToks, Twitter wars, Hall of Famers picking sides, and somehow, through it all, Sophie Cunningham becoming either the villain or the hero of women's basketball, depending on which corner of the internet you hang out in. On May 30, 2025, the short-handed Indiana Fever hosted Connecticut in Indianapolis without rookie sensation Caitlin Clark, who was nursing a strained left quad. Sydney Colson, the only other point guard on the roster, left the game in the first quarter with a left leg injury and did not return. After being forced to recalibrate on the fly, the Fever then lost Sophie Cunningham, who had become the de facto point guard in the absence of Clark and Colson, late in the fourth quarter as she re-aggravated an ankle sprain from the preseason.
They make the most out of their use in practice and on the court.
Head coach Stephanie White called it a gut-check moment for a roster already stretched thin by injuries and increasingly rough play. This convinced Indiana's locker room that opponents were willing to win by wearing them down rather than outscoring them. 17 days later, June 17, the same teams met on the same floor, but the tone had shifted from attrition to retaliation. Clark was back in the lineup, Cunningham's ankle was heavily taped, and the Fever were chasing a Commissioner's Cup berth. Tension cracked open midway through the third quarter when Sun rookie J.C. Sheldon poked Clark in the eye.
Clark hustling away. I mean, is that displacement? I think you know he's in the mix. There's a lot of contact here. There's a scrape across the face.
Marina Mabrey's late shove bowled Clark over, drawing 3 technicals and a flagrant one.
Oh, and Marina Mabrey's going to get ejected. If the officials saw, and it's contact to the face as well, it'd be interesting to know if they're going to look at that first one for.
Indiana's players seethed but kept control until the final minute. With 46.1 seconds remaining, Sheldon stole the ball and sprinted for an uncontested lay-in. Cunningham caught up, wrapped both arms around her shoulders, and wrenched her to the floor.
Sheldon going coast to coast, and here's we got another.
The ensuing scrum ended with Cunningham, Sheldon, and Connecticut's Lindsay Allen all ejected. Cunningham assessed a flagrant 2.
24 on the shot.
Cunningham is apparently done.
And Clark calmly burying the free throws that iced an 88-71 Fever win and clinched the cup slot. Taken together, the two nights trace a clear arc. May 30 exposed how physically vulnerable Indiana could be without its star guard and without anyone to police the elbows. June 17 announced that Cunningham, now healthy and unapologetically protective, had volunteered for the job, transforming an ordinary conference matchup into one of the WNBA's most talked-about rivalries. By mid-afternoon, the WNBA completed its review and announced that no one would be suspended for the Fever Sun scuffles. Instead, Sophie Cunningham was hit with the automatic 400 flagrant 2 fine plus an additional undisclosed penalty for escalating the incident, while Marina Mabrey's third-quarter tech was upgraded to a flagrant 2 and fined at the same rate. J.C. Sheldon and Lindsay Allen escaped with only the ejection on their game logs. League VP Bethany Donovan said the tape showed no intent to injure, a line that did little to quiet either fan base. The decision landed just hours after Indiana's morning film session, where, as Cunningham later revealed on her podcast, Caitlin Clark looked up and cracked, "Finally, someone did something." The backlash kept rolling. Overnight, a change-org petition titled "Remove Sophie Cunningham from the WNBA for Misconduct" began racking up signatures and hate clicks, while FreeSophie trended just as hard in Indiana. On ESPN's First Take, Stephen A. Smith argued that some of the vitriol toward Clark was self-induced, prompting Barstool's Dave Portnoy to fire back on X. "I'll take things that never happened, but ESPN pretends did for 100 Alex." The exchange bounced across sports radio and TikTok all day, framing Cunningham as either bodyguard or bully depending on your algorithm. But here's where it gets really wild. By 3 p.m. that same day, the petition had already hit 2,500 signatures, but then something unexpected happened. Counter-petitions started popping up faster than you could refresh the page. Protect Sophie Cunningham, she's just playing basketball, gained 1,800 signatures in 4 hours. Give Sophie Cunningham a medal for defending Clark, somehow got 900 signatures before it was taken down for violating site guidelines. The comment sections became absolute battlegrounds. One user wrote, "This is what happens when you let emotions override professionalism." Another fired back, "This is what happens when refs let players get mugged all season." The debate wasn't just about basketball anymore. It had become a full-blown cultural flashpoint about aggression, protection, and what it means to play the right way. June 20. Story of the season, like it or not. 48 hours on, the league had hoped media would pivot to promoting the Fever's newly clinched Commissioner's Cup berth, but every press hit still opened with the fight. Connecticut coach Rachid Mezian grumbled that the fine totals were what some of our players tipped the valet, while Fever coach Stephanie White reiterated that officiating, not enforcement, was the root problem. But the real fireworks came during the league's weekly media call. When asked about player safety protocols, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert gave what many called a non-answer wrapped in corporate speak. She said the league was constantly evaluating our disciplinary framework to ensure it matches the competitive intensity our fans love, while maintaining the safety standards our players deserve. Twitter immediately translated this as "we have no idea what we're doing." The quote got clipped, memed, and turned into reaction GIFs within hours. One particularly viral TikTok showed Engelbert's statement over footage of Cunningham's tackle with the caption, "Competitive intensity," she said. National debate turned to whether the W's modest discipline structure can keep pace with the sport's surging visibility, a conversation that, for better or worse, now centered on the three-day chain reaction set off by Cunningham's tackle. June 21-22. Over the weekend, the story exploded beyond sports media. Cunningham's Instagram gained 15,000 followers in 48 hours with her most recent post, a simple photo of her game-worn sneakers, collecting 50,000 likes and 8,000 comments ranging from "Queen behavior" to "You're everything wrong with sports today." Meanwhile, basketball Twitter was having a field day. Analytics accounts started posting heat maps of aggressive defensive plays throughout the season, trying to prove whether Cunningham was an outlier or just the latest scapegoat. Old clips of legendary defenders like Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi making hard fouls went viral with captions like "This you," directed at critics calling for Cunningham's head. The most telling moment came when former WNBA player Candace Dupree tweeted, "Y'all want us to be physical and competitive until we actually are. Pick a lane." The tweet got 25,000 retweets and somehow managed to unite both sides of the debate in agreeing she had a point. They just disagreed about what that point was. June 23. A Change.org campaign titled "Remove Sophie Cunningham from the WNBA for Misconduct" crossed the 10,000 signature mark before noon, while the counter hashtag #FreeSophie trended on X screenshots of the petition, complete with comments calling Cunningham both a thug and a folk hero for defending Clark, circulated nonstop on sports talk shows and Reddit. What made this particularly insane was how quickly it became a proxy war for larger cultural battles. Conservative commentators praised Cunningham for old-school basketball values and protecting your teammate. Progressive voices criticized the toxic masculinity of celebrating violence in women's sports. Somehow, a basketball scuffle had become a litmus test for everything from gender roles to generational differences in sports fandom. The most surreal moment came when the petition's creator, a 19-year-old college student from Oregon who later admitted she'd never watched a full WNBA game, went on local radio to defend her stance. "I just think there should be consequences for that kind of behavior," she said, seemingly unaware she'd accidentally started a national conversation about the future of women's professional basketball. June 24. On the Women's Hoops show, Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoops said the real problem on June 17 wasn't Cunningham's tackle, but Caitlin Clark's response moments earlier and refs who let it all snowball. Her critique gave traditional media an opening. All day long anchors replayed the eye poke sequence frame by frame, asking whether Clark escalates contact or merely absorbs it. But Swoops wasn't done. In a follow-up interview with ESPN, she dropped what became the quote of the week. "In my day, if someone was taking cheap shots at our rookie, we handled it. The only difference now is everyone has a camera and an opinion." The clip went viral, with younger fans discovering Swoop's legendary career while older fans nodded along in agreement. The segment kept officiating and Cunningham's rationale for stepping in on the front burner. More importantly, it shifted the conversation from "should players police the game?" to "how have players always policed the game?" It was a subtle but crucial difference that gave Cunningham's defenders a historical framework to work with. June 25-26. With the Fever in Las Vegas and then Seattle for a back-to-back, Cunningham met reporters at shoot-around and absolutely delivered. When asked about the ongoing controversy, she looked directly into the camera and said, "I'd rather be fined for caring too much than celebrated for caring too little." The quote became an instant meme. But she wasn't finished. When pressed about whether she regretted the play, Cunningham paused, smiled slightly, and said, "I regret that it took until June for someone to step up." Then she blasted the league for policing celebrations harder than elbows, a quip first published by Fox News Digital and clipped across social media. That night in the team hotel, she recorded a 10-second TikTok lip-sync to Sabrina Carpenter's "Manchild," tagging at some refs. The clip wouldn't go live and earn a $500 fine until mid-July, but teammates were already replaying it on their phones, turning the refs versus players debate into shareable comedy. Kelsey Mitchell later said the whole team was crying laughing, watching Cunningham rehearse it in her hotel room. June 27, Indiana went to Dallas without Clark, bruised eyelid, and still jumped out 22-4 behind Kelsey Mitchell, eventually winning 94-86. Cunningham, wearing a heavy sleeve on her right leg, chipped in 14 points and a pair of late-game box-outs that sent Wings rookie Paige Bueckers tumbling. The crowd was electric every time Cunningham touched the ball, half cheering, half booing, all engaged. During warm-ups, someone threw a foam finger with Bodyguard written on it onto the court. Security confiscated it, but not before Cunningham saw it and cracked up laughing. Post-game, Dallas media tried to ask about dirty play. Cunningham answered with a wink, clean as the stripes let it be. The scoreboard said win, but the week had proved the real contest was for narrative control, and Cunningham had no intention of giving that up. What started as a basketball scuffle had become something much larger. A referendum on how we want women's sports to grow, what kind of competition we're comfortable with, and who gets to decide what crosses the line. Sophie Cunningham didn't just tackle J.C. Sheldon. She inadvertently tackled years of assumptions about women's basketball, fan expectations, and the price of protection in professional sports. The petition to remove her from the league would eventually peak at 47,000 signatures before fading into internet history. The FreeSophie movement would outlast it by months, but the real legacy of those 10 wild days in June wasn't about Sophie Cunningham at all. It was about a league, and its fans finally reckoning with what they really wanted women's basketball to become. Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham had forced everyone to pick a side. And in a league that had spent decades fighting for attention, maybe that was exactly what it needed.